Our members are dedicated to service above self and Rotary's four-way test. Leading us today in our opening song and pledge is Deb Harrison, and providing our invocation is David Lovelace. Deb.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. Spirit of life and love, help us to understand as best we can in this time of confusion and uncertainty how to respond to the issues that confound our nation, our community, and our personal lives. Guide us in the ways of peace, justice, and truth, so all may enjoy the freedom and equality on which this nation was founded. Bless, we pray, all who suffer from COVID-19 and those who minister them of healing gifts. In this land, we're blessed with honorable industry and meaningful opportunities to enjoy the fruits of our labors. Bless our speaker today and all who enrich our lives by their innovative efforts as we seek to serve others before ourselves. Guide us to honor each other with dignity and with respect. We pray in your most holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Deb and Dave, for uplifting us in song and words of praise. Guide us in the ways of peace, as Dave said. Being Rotarians goes beyond the commitment of weekly meetings, as we all know. Along with many humanitarian causes, it's about creating an environment of peace. We are just a few weeks from the beginning of February, which is Rotary International's Peace and Conflict Prevention Resolution Month. And this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt resonates with me. Quote, "It isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work at it," end quote. Today, over 70 million people are displaced as a result of conflict, violence, persecution, and human rights violations. Half of them are children. Can you believe that? Over 35 million children are displaced because adults are not able to resolve differences in a peaceful manner. To me, and likely to you, that is unacceptable. I take a look at our own country and see that conflict has become more and more a part of everyday life. Do we want to continue living this way? Do we want our children and grandchildren to inherit a legacy of conflict or one of peace? As we watch the news networks and read information online, it is hard to get away from reports of conflict or commentary that creates conflict. And quite frankly, it's something I can handle a lot less of in my life. Heck, I used to think that conflict resolution at Rotary was how to get past President Jody Keller off the stage before she would tell another bad joke. Well, I'm not here to tell you how I feel about the state of the world today, but rather to give you a peek inside where we, as Rotarians, are uniquely positioned to advance peace and transform our community. J. Donald Walters, the author of more than 50 books on leadership and moral values, says, "You will find peace not by trying to escape your problems, but by confronting them courageously. You will not find peace in denial, but in victory." Rotary creates environments of peace. As Rotarians, we refuse to accept conflict as a way of life. As a humanitarian organization, peace is a cornerstone of Rotary's mission. We believe that when people work to create peace in their communities, that change can have a global effect. By carrying out service projects and supporting peace fellowships and scholarships, our members take action to address the underlying causes of conflict, which include poverty, discrimination, racism, ethnic tension, lack of access to education, and unequal distribution of resources. Rotary service projects, foundation grants, and a lot of listening are the tools that we have to do things in our community that are transformational, not just feel good, but transformational. As the Rotary Club of York, we can use these tools to do better. In fact, we must do better. We can do what's needed to transform our York County community from a society where conflict is present to a place where peace reigns supreme. JFK said, "Peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, quietly building new structures," end quote. Some small first steps as we approach Rotary International's Peace and Conflict Prevention Resolution Month are already being taken. First, our DEI and program committees are collaborating to feature more speakers to help us better understand the challenges we face as a community. Second, the DEI committee is also preparing to circulate a survey to you, our members. It is critical that you reply to this research tool so that we can understand your perspectives. We may have internal gains to make in our own club to set the foundation for progress externally. You will hear more about the survey at our January 27th meeting. In addition to the DEI efforts, Rotary Club of York will start calling in and welcoming community members who want to help unite and create lasting change. Calling in involves conversation, compassion, and context. We ask you, our members, to invite community members to join us on Wednesdays for a look inside the largest Rotary in the Commonwealth. You might even get some tech support if you join us early, as today. By calling in, we always keep a seat at the table with an open ear to the area we call home and develop a better understanding of how our service above self can better serve our community. Albert Einstein said, "Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding," end quote. Our commitment to peace building today and for the long term brings up new questions and challenges. How can we make the greatest impact possible? How can we create a vision of lasting change? How do we promote peace with greater cohesion and inclusivity? How do we get more people involved? Rotary creates environments where peace can happen. As practitioners, our work fighting disease, providing clean water and sanitation, improving the health of mothers and children, supporting education, and growing local economies directly build the optimal conditions for peaceful societies. The Rotary Club of York has been in existence for 105 years. Our proudest moments are still ahead. We as Rotarians can be part of the solution. In his famous song, New York, New York, Frank Sinatra sang about making a brand new start of it. Old Blue Eyes also said, quote, "If you don't know the guy on the other side of the world, love him anyway, because he is just like you. He has the same dreams, the same hopes and fears. It's one world, pal. We're all neighbors," end quote. It's up to us to come through. We Rotarians can reduce conflict and create peace here where we live. From here, peace can spread worldwide. Thank you to Jean Truthart, Chris Topp, and Cal Weary for collaborating on these comments. On to our announcements. Rotarian member emeritus Art Cayley has returned home after a recent hospitalization. Cheer and thinking of you cards would be welcome and mailed to his home address. Our deepest sympathy to Rotarian Sarah Austin upon the passing of your father. Membership committee will meet today following the club meeting. Our board of directors will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. And January 15th is the application deadline for our literacy committee book drive. Contact Committee Chair Deb Harrison with any questions. Next is our business spotlight, and it is on Ream Printing. What you are currently viewing is the Ream Printing 2020 Christmas card featuring a Zoom call that was recently held with the Ream Printing family of pets. Just adorable. Ream Printing Company has been locally owned and family operated in York County for over 3 decades. The company was founded in August of '98 by Rotarian Jean Minnick Ream and her husband, Jim. Today, they have a complement of 15 employees. Ream's expertise includes quality, affordable design, printing, and mailing services. They accommodate jobs from short-run printing on high-quality digital presses to large-run full-color projects. Ream provides superior craftsmanship, attention to detail, personalized service, fast turnaround, and most importantly, reasonable prices. COVID's impact on the business includes reduced business-to-business sales for budget cuts and cost-saving marketing reductions. Rotarian Jean Ream is one of our very first female members. She was inducted into the club on November 16, 1988, alongside past President Jody Keller. Jean, thank you for your 32 years of service above self. Now for a presentation from Aaron Jacobs on Preserve Planet Earth. And Aaron, thanks for a Kiwanis Lake update.
Thank you so much. Can I get a screen share, or do I have that now? Did everybody see my?
Yep, hold on.
Okay.
All right, try that now, Aaron.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Head nod, wonderful. Okay, so I just got a couple minutes here. I want to update everybody on the progress we're making at the lake. For those of you who don't know, simply said, the lake was experiencing problems with water quality and all the working pieces stopped working. And so we've endeavored through a lot of different partners to make the lake better again. We're about halfway done, and I just want to give the club an update as to what we have going on. Just a quick update on each of the phase, talk about the impact, the challenges, what's left to be done, and a quick shout out to the donors. So what's been accomplished so far is the gate repair is almost complete. If you've driven by the lake in November, you'll have seen a lot of activity. The fountains are pretty much installed at this point, and we got a lot of the large trash out of the lake. You'll see there's the guys working on the lake, or I'm sorry, on the gate. This was the biggest part of the project, and this was coordinated by our Rotarian, Alan Roth. We've had a lot of Rotarians help with this, but this particular one could not have happened without Alan, and I appreciate all that he's done. This took 4 weeks to get this gate completed, and it's not quite finished yet. If you've driven by the lake, you'll see there's some debris caught in there. We have a one valve that isn't working properly, and we can't service it right now because the water's too cold. But we're going to get back to that in the springtime, but the worst is behind us on that gate for sure. The fountains, 2 of the fountains have been installed. One of them had to get a little bit of service work done on them. You might see them disappear in the coming weeks for the winter. The recommendation from the vendor was to pull them so they don't freeze. But by the springtime, you will see them installed. Most of you have probably seen it if you've driven by the lake, and if you see it at night, you'll see they also come with lights. You can see that on the picture there on the right. You see the happy gang, Doug Fitzgerald, Dave Hoffman, again, Alan Roth pulling trash out of the lake. A few treasures in there like tires and traffic cones. The biggest things we found were the old concrete trash bins that they had around the lake that I guess ne'er-do-wells had pushed in at one point in time. The good news is it wasn't as much stuff at the bottom of the lake as we were expecting, but it still made a big difference all the same. And we're happy to have that part done. Couple challenges. If you look you see Alan and I standing there on the dam. Behind us, you see some water flow at the bottom. That's the bypass valve. That's how we were able to drain the lake. Apparently it doesn't get used much, and it's quite old because we broke it. Somehow I should probably blame Alan Roth for this, but that doesn't seem like the Rotarian thing to do. But we have to fix that now. So that's one of the challenges we hit. Another one, like I talked about with the gate, not everything worked right out of the box. I guess that's to be expected, but we're going to get that taken care of in the next few months. Third challenge, don't mess with the protected species of birds that make home to that lake. I'm speaking specifically the herons. Since we started this project, not a week goes by that I don't get an email from a bird enthusiast warning me and schooling me on to not mess with the herons. And I assure you, we have not messed with the herons. They are okay. They will come back in the spring. They will be just as happy as you are to see the improvements we've made. And because of that, we had to start the project a lot later than we had planned. We wanted to start in September. We didn't start until November. So what's left to be done? We just have to put a few touch-ups on the gate. We have to install the aeration in the bottom of the lake to get rid of that sediment. And we have to do the smart lake feature. And Rotarian Tom Barton is at the lake as we speak, working on putting in the smart lake feature. Couple lessons learned. If you look to the left, this is what the bottom of the lake looks like. A lot of mud and debris that we have to get rid of. But I would have thought it would take 2-3 days to empty and fill the lake. Nope, you can do it in one day. And that's especially thanks to Stuart and Tate, who's been a big help on this project. I also learned that when the lake is drained, there really aren't a lot of fish around this time of year. It gets fished hard. And fixing a small floodgate takes a lot of equipment and manpower. And I'm sure if you drove by in November, you saw that large crane out there for weeks used to steady up that little floodgate. So quick look at the donors there and look who's down there getting the big check. This guy. That's from the Uptown Rotary Club. But a lot of people have made this possible. We did reach our fundraising goal and we've had a lot of good in-kind contributions. So we're expecting to have this wrapped up in May of this year. And that's all thanks to the Rotary Club of York. If you want me to take questions now, I can, or you can boot me off to stick with the program.
Thanks a lot, Aaron. That's a lovely labor of lake love, and thank you for your leadership to advance it. It sounds like a real team effort. Hopefully by May, we will all be able to enjoy it in person. So thank you very much. We appreciate the update.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, next we'd like to invite Mark Wheeler to the virtual Rotary podium for our Youth Leadership Students of the Month from Central York High School. Mark.
Thank you, President Ann. Good afternoon, Rotarians. I'm fortunate today, as President Ann said, to present the Students of the Month for Central York High School, the Panthers. We have Ms. Tony Bell and we have Mr. Jeremiah Smith. Tony's parents are Christopher and Kimberly Bell. Some school activities for Tony. You see a picture of her on the screen. Football cheer, basketball cheer, and competitive cheer. She also is an athlete, JV basketball and track and field. On the community side, she's been involved in junior and senior honors choir, YMCA Achievers, and AAU basketball. On the volunteer side of things, she's been involved in York County Student Diversity Council and a Christmas food box distribution with Lancaster County Project for the Needy. As it relates to hobbies, she likes to write stories, cook, watch TV, and movies. A couple other distinctions for Tony. She's on the Distinguished Honor Roll on a regular basis. And she also is currently in dual enrollment at Harrisburg Area Community College. When we start to talk about next steps and career plans, Tony's current thoughts are to attend a historically Black college or university to obtain a bachelor's degree in journalism and communication, and from there to begin a career as a publicist. Congratulations, Tony. Our second student of the month from Central is Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah is the son of Josh and Jess Smith. His picture is now on the screen. Some school activities for Jeremiah: Junior ROTC, Panther Fitness Challenger participant and a placeholder, and 3 years of varsity wrestling. His hobbies include hunting, fishing, automotive repair and restoration, lawn care, landscaping, welding, wrestling, and weight training. He's a busy young man, as Tony was a busy young lady. On the distinction side, Jeremiah was fortunate enough to attend and participate in the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Council. He also is a regular participant in Distinguished Honor Roll, a district qualifier for wrestling, and a member of the PA National Greco and Freestyle Wrestling Team. I'm not wrestling Jeremiah. Career plans. After high school, a very focused young man. After high school, he plans to serve as a pipe welder's apprentice while growing his landscaping business to sell. Once he has that done, he wants to go and become a pipeline welder and also sell that business. Again, congratulations, Jeremiah and Tony.
Hello, I'm honored to have been selected as a Student of the Month for January 2021. My name is Tony Bell and I'm a junior at Central York High School. Though information has already been shared with you about me, I will be taking the next couple of minutes to share with you an experience that has had significant importance to me, being a part of 4 generations of strong Black women. Being a Black female in 2020 is something to cherish because Black women have been overlooked for decades. Prior to Vice President-elect Kamala Harris pursuing the Democratic nomination, another Black woman named Shirley Chisholm did so in 1972. And without Ruby Bridges taking the first step to desegregate schools in 1960, I might not be where I am today, a Black female succeeding in a public high school. This simply goes to show that for generations, Black women have persevered, served as role models, and demonstrated strength to excel in situations where they may have been overlooked or disregarded. From my great-grandmother, Danetta Jones, I learned how to be compassionate and loyal. From my grandmother, Renee Moore, I learned how to be caring and generous. From my mother, Kimberly Bell, and my aunt, Jennifer Livingston, I learned how to be driven and assertive. These traits that I learned from the generations before me have helped shape me to be who I am today. The 4 generations that I was a part of recently reduced to 3. In mid-November, my great-grandmother contracted COVID-19 from her assisted living facility. In a way I could never have imagined, COVID-19 took the life of my great-grandmother on Thanksgiving Day. From being born during the Great Depression to living through multiple wars and the Civil Rights Movement, she ended up succumbing to this pandemic that is affecting all of our lives. She had to go through things that thankfully I would never have to go through, things like segregation and blatant discrimination based on both race and gender. She fought for many things for 92 years, but COVID defeated her in the end. I contracted COVID-19 shortly after she did. Thankfully, the end result of my exposure was different than hers. I was able to beat it and recover. Saying my goodbyes to someone who taught me so much was very hard, but I will continue to learn and grow from the women before me. I hope I can contribute to those following me as much as those before me have contributed to me. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah Smith and I'm a junior at Central York High School. An activity or experience that I think has been important to me has been wrestling. The sport has developed me into a strong leader. It has also taught me to be self-motivated and has driven me to be disciplined through hard times. As a leader, I've been able to lead on the wrestling team. I have also been able to lead and been a guest coach at elementary wrestling practices. Wrestling has taught me a lot about self-motivation and discipline. A lot of hard work takes place on my own outside of school practices. I've had to balance early morning workouts and club practices after school, while maintaining my grades in school and keeping my lawn business growing. Perhaps the greatest thing that wrestling has taught me to do is never give up. When a match doesn't go my way, I must learn from it in hopes of a better outcome the next time. This is much like life, where there are many bumps and we are forced to continue on. Thank you.
Congratulations to both of you, Tony and Jeremiah. And thanks to you, Central York students, for your hard work, for your initiative, and your dedication. They're all 3 evident in the amazing accomplishments and work that you have achieved in your very young years. We wish you the absolute best for your future. It's evident that you should be very proud of your work and that you have bright futures ahead of you. Tony, I would like to express our sympathy from our club on the loss of your great-grandmother. You both honor your ancestors, and we hope that you will consider York County as your home once you finish your studies to continue your generations here in our community. We always welcome you back to the Rotary Club of York at any time. Very best in your future. Our students will receive Scholastic Achievement Award certificates. Thank you, Mark, for presenting them. And now on to introduce our program, Patty Stirk.
Well, I'd just like to take a second to say thank you and congratulations to Tony and Jeremiah. And I'd like to take this moment to say thanks to Jean Ream and Jody Keller for blazing the trail in the Rotary Club of York so that we could be here today. And with that, Rotarians and guests, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. James Norrie. Dr. Norrie was the inaugural dean of the Graham School of Business at York College of Pennsylvania, where he is currently serving as professor of strategy and cybersecurity. In addition to his academic role, he conducts and publishes industry-related research, speaks globally at conferences and consults to Fortune 500 companies globally on aligning business and IT strategy, data privacy, and security, and economic crime detection and prevention methods, including the intersection of behavior science and cybersecurity. He is the founder of cyberconIQ, located right here in York, PA. And I promise you, his presentation today is not going to emphasize the technical aspects of these things. It's going to emphasize the human aspects. Dr. Norrie is a frequent media commentator on these complex topics, drawing directly from his training in business, law, and education to provide a non-technical viewpoint on complex topics. Let me say that again, a non-technical viewpoint on these complex topics and the realities of balancing national security and individual liberty. He has been featured in op-eds in national newspapers across the country and quoted recently in the New York Times on recent Russian-US election interference and other noteworthy topics on which his expertise is sought. Dr. Norrie holds 6 degrees across 4 disciplines. Let me say that again. 6 degrees, 4 disciplines: business, engineering, educational psychology, and law. He received his doctorate from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology in Australia and a graduate law degree from the University of Strathclyde in the UK. His other degrees include a master's in computer engineering from the University of Waterloo, a master's in cybersecurity from Utica College, and a master's in education in educational psychology from Brock University. His undergraduate degree was a Bachelor in Commerce degree with honors in accounting and finance, with a minor in computer science from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. He is the author or co-author of 5 books, multiple journal articles, and hundreds of conference presentations and companion articles at various industry conferences. Prior to joining York College, Dr. Norrie was an entrepreneur and a successful executive at Pitney Bowes in Stamford, Connecticut. As a serial entrepreneur, cyberconIQ is his 5th startup. He proudly lives in downtown York, PA with his partner Steve, and lovingly attends to the needs of his 2 teenage daughters who still reside in Canada. And as we listen to our presentation today, I'd like to take this opportunity to point out that our speaker demonstrates why we donate to the Rotary Foundation every 4th quarter. Dr. Norrie was an ambassadorial scholar to France in 1998. Think about that as you watch today, and without further ado, Rotarians, help me welcome Dr. James Norrie.
Thank you. Zoom applause, my favorite thing. If this was 2018, I would be thanking Rotary for my lunch, but of course that's not possible. It was Jersey Mike's sub. So thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm delighted to be here. I do want to say, Patty, that you were kind enough to age me down a decade. It was actually 1988 that I was off to do this. And that brings me to my very first slide that I want to share with you. So I have a profound connection to Rotary, a lifetime connection to Rotary, actually, because when I was a very young 3rd-year undergraduate college student, I was selected for a Rotary Foundation scholarship abroad in France. And I spent a year in France representing the Board of Governors in Evanston, Illinois, all over Europe. And it was a fantastic year. I still have incredible connections from that time to friends and Rotarians. I think it boosts anybody's confidence to be in a position where you frequently have to make public presentations and to make discussions and conversation relevant to different cultures. So I learned a lot about about that. And certainly I credit much of where I got to later with my firm understanding of the idea of service over self. So I am indebted to Rotary, and I am really delighted actually to be speaking to the largest club in the Commonwealth, in fact, one of the largest clubs in the United States. So thank you again for having me today. I presume you can all see my slides and hear me just fine. Is that right? Good. Well, let's dive in, because I want to talk to you a little bit about entrepreneurial ecosystems and how we sort of came to be here and how that helps York and the greater Commonwealth in economic development and other terms. And then we'll follow with some questions and discussions. I hope it will be lively and there will be something of great value in here for most of you. So let's dive into this idea of where my journey began. You heard Patty already talk about the fact that I happen to have the intersection of disciplines that make cybersecurity virtually a perfect fit for me. And cyber has become not a technical topic, but one which involves the law, because it is cyberspace is a supranational construct. It hovers above nations. It's very complicated. And so much of what we do now involves my understanding of education and changing people's behavior and helping people not approach cyberspace with fear, but with some sense of actually hope, some sense that we will not continue to be victimized by the continual move to technology and online worlds, but that we can actually harness them for better purposes and the greater good. So we have seen of late, unfortunately, some very bad uses of social media, and it plagues those of us who study information literacy to watch what is going on. It is a death spiral in some ways of the truth, and it is a really unfortunate set of circumstances that we study. But that said, I'm glad to have the disciplinary background and to have an opportunity to work at a college, and I'll get to the role of York College in this whole story in a few minutes. But the idea that we would allow people to study this in a nonpartisan way and think about the problem in different terms is a really important part of the future solution. So for a variety of reasons, this journey is in this book, and you can find it in Amazon. It has the minor claim to fame of being an Amazon.com bestseller, which is kind of fun. But it is the thesis that you cannot count on technology to keep you safe from a technology problem. And so the entire thesis of both this book and eventually what became CyberCon, which was my fifth startup in June 2019, is the idea that it is us that is responsible for keeping ourselves safer online. And it is not big technology's job to keep us safer, actually. They would argue that they entice us into something that's good for us, but it may or may not be good for us. So there's a certain degree of skepticism I want you to have about the interests of big tech as it relates to our personal information, privacy, and security. And if you understand that as a thesis, then you also understand the importance of an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I want to spend a few minutes there talking about how these three things actually came to give birth to this little wee startup that could potentially change the world right here in York, PA. So the first part of that is that I have the privilege of serving at the Graham School of Business. In fact, I was its first dean, delighted to serve. And we have a really excellent college. And that college is an asset to our community that cannot be underestimated for its impact. But particularly in this story, it has a lot to do with developing the workforce of the future and enabling us to have a pool of students here who come and study and who may eventually choose, as a couple of students here have done, to make York County home when it wasn't previously their home. So I think that there's really an amazing part of this ecosystem which has to do with our institutions of higher learning, and particularly in this case, the story is about York. But I would argue that college towns, or those towns that have a large weight of academic presence in them, typically are going to do better on this front than communities and locales that do not. So I want to stress that that's the first important thing. Then, of course, we come to economic development and the role that Ben Franklin Technology Partners plays. Now, some of you may or may not know about Ben Franklin, and I'll cover that in a few minutes, but they were an essential economic engine for the early funding and growth of this particular startup. And then, of course, there is the fact that we are located proudly right here in the city of York. Our offices are at 221 West Philadelphia Street, the Susquehanna Corporate Center, which I ironically heard referred to as York's version of the Twin Towers. I can assure you, I hope not in this particular instance, but yes, our Twin Towers in York. So that is the ecosystem that I want to talk a little bit about. So I started to mention already York. So I'm a tenured professor and former dean at the college. And one of the things that the college gives professors access to is funding and time. And funding and time to do research and think about problems differently was the critical kernel that began cyberconIQ. It would not have begun unless I had a research agenda at the college. And that research agenda, in turn, engages bright students in my classes, for an example. Some of them become TAs or RAs. Many of them get involved in research opportunities. And all of that sort of super cool mix was brought to bear when now 4 years ago, when I became the dean, us launching cybersecurity, integrated marketing communications, and a bunch of other really contemporary majors that addressed the workforce needs of the future. So cybersecurity is a great example. It's not that we didn't already have a great IT program or a great computer science program. We do, they're wonderful. But it's drawing from those plus information analysis, which is a world-class program that we have over in political science, plus some other new curriculum, and pulling it together to take a managerial view of cybersecurity and to equip this particular region with graduates who have the skills necessary to protect us and this nation from harm online. I want to point out that in the 100-mile radius of Washington, D.C., are currently about 11,000 open cybersecurity jobs. Let me repeat that. Within 100 miles of Washington, D.C., are almost 11,000 open cybersecurity jobs. When I tell you that there is an undersupply of qualified and talented young people joining this, it has a lot to do with the fact that STEM careers aren't necessarily well understood, particularly true amongst minorities and women, by the way. And so one of the things that I think is so, again, important is to have people understand that these programs are serving the long-term better interests of students who select them as well. Not only do they help us in the nation, they help themselves by picking a career that is durable, it's got high compensation, and anyway, so just something to think about in terms of the role of education and community development. The last point I want to make down on that slide, which is really important, is I am so proud of the fact, and you'll discover in a few minutes, we have a number of intersection points with the college, but one of the coolest things is I have 2 students from the college on my payroll. So they got jobs right here in York County, in York City. 2 of them, both of them, would probably have left, one of them to return to New Jersey, one of them to Southern Maryland, and instead they have stayed and have come to work for us. So that is a very virtuous circle when you see how the college attracts people to York, how they experience the college and its programs, and then how they can potentially remain here or seek employment. And even if they don't, they become alumni, and that becomes another important part of this story, because as you'll hear in a few minutes, there's a couple of important alumni from the college who are also engaged in CyberCon's development. The middle column, I don't know how familiar any of you are with the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, but this is an extension of the state economic development effort, and it is a fund which makes investments in startups. We won a statewide competition this past year, and were selected not only for the first ever equity investment in a startup, which was amazing, but it's a 2-tranche investment. It's $150,000 first tranche and a second following tranche in the spring, subject to us doing what we need to do with the funds. But these are significant funds that occur at a really important early point, and they are designed by the Commonwealth to allow us to access capital, which is of course the challenge of any startup. And it's interesting, I will point out that under tax laws in the United States, it's not that I can't entirely self-fund. I am obviously a significant shareholder in my own company, but as many of you know, if you maintain control over your own company, you eventually run the risk of being deemed a holding company. So one of the most important things is for a startup to grow up and have other shareholders and other board members, and to start to look and feel like a company, because that's going to advance its own interests, but also keep it on the right side of tax law in the United States. So Ben Franklin is a critical part of this economic development system and agenda in the Commonwealth, and again here in the state. I also point out proudly that this is the first time that an academic from something other than Penn State has also won this particular competition. So I'm quite proud that York College features in this story. It was with the help of Joe Hackett, graduate who is both at Ben Franklin and at the Entrepreneurial Center at the college, that we were able to make these connections. So the fact that Joe and I knew one another is, again, proof positive. Now you're beginning to see what I mean by ecosystem. That is, there I am at the college with an idea. There is Joe Hackett, who happens to be also working at the Entrepreneurial Center at the same time that we have him engaged with Ben Franklin. And so the connections were made and away we go. I'll also point out that the winning of this particular competition gets you statewide political connections and recognition as well. And so I want to thank the number of local politicians, both the Senate and the House, who have been incredibly kind in making connections to state government and to local government and supporting us. And we had a wonderful event that Patty will remember just before Thanksgiving, where we had a number of very significant politicians show up to sort of reinforce how much they cared about nurturing the Ben Franklin companies. And we had a number of Ben Franklin alumni companies come out. So this is a really neat, again, part of the ecosystem, because there are now companies who have come before you, and you have access to those folks who have built startups previously in the Commonwealth, and for them to share their own journeys with you. So it's a very interesting part of the puzzle here. The last partner contribution, of course, is the City of York and the county for that matter. And I want to shout out, so a couple of shout outs. One is that the County of York was one of our first clients, so we were delighted to have them. We also have York Traditions Bank is an early customer. We have just restarted conversations with York Water Company. So again, what's really neat is once we opened our office, we sort of started to get a little more local traction, and people started to see us and hear about us. And it's kind of fun to be adopted by your local city or community. I can't tell you how important it is. And I say this to Rotarians because it is really important that when we have a startup here. So when we first began, we had more revenues way outside of York and the Commonwealth than we did actually in our own backyard. And that's not uncommon for a startup, but it is important that we adopt our startups and do whatever we can as a business community to rally behind them, because when they're young is when they need the most support. So startups are a lot like our own children. They need us most. They need that parental support and making that firm commitment to spread, whether the word of mouth, become a customer, whether you support it in however you support startups. They're really like our young yearlings, and we need to kind of get them into adulthood. And one of the ways of doing that is to stabilize local support. So again, I just want to point out it's become so evident to me that this community is a wonderful community. When I joined it as a resident, I also had no idea, or very little idea, but it's a business community. But I was exposed to that, of course, during my time as dean. And it is a really special place that we live in. So it's important that we use that special place and bring it to bear, I think, on particularly on our startups, and to make sure that they feel like they are being adopted in the city and the region. So that's sort of what I want to talk about in terms of the ecosystem. Now to make a couple more points about this. So you'll see a picture of a Rotarian up there. So on our board includes Patty Stirk, who introduced me, and she kindly agreed to join our board. You'll also see a couple of other local notable names. John Dolmich, half of the brothers who own Big here in town. Steve Tansey, many of you may know. So again, what I see is a sense of people rallying around us and providing that early support, mentoring and coaching, because they have all built businesses here successfully. So it was a really wonderful thing. And again, a number of these people cross over again to the college. So Steve Tansey's on the board of the college. John is a graduate of the college. Patty's a graduate of the college. So again, you are starting to see how people who graduated from your college 10, 20 years ago, in Patty's case, 5 years ago, just amazing, 2 years ago, I'm sorry, Patty, amazing how those people are repaying that kindness forward by then coming forward and linking themselves and their political capital, their social capital, really to bolster this opportunity. I will also point out that we have in this group more than 10 startups between us and over 100 years of startup experience. So you can't also underestimate the value. Now, for me, I have the privilege of being a college professor. And so one of my claims to fame is that I have also mentored 7 students during my academic career to becoming multimillionaires in their own right. Because I think one of the things that you owe as a college professor is to offer that mentoring and coaching opportunity to students. Because if they have somebody who hovers on their shoulder who's done this, then they feel more certain and more confident in starting their own entrepreneurial journey. So the other thing I take great pride in is the work that the college does to identify young entrepreneurs who are college students who can benefit from the coaching and the mentoring. And it extends to me, but it is even more important we extend it to students who have entrepreneurial ideas. So that's a little bit about how the ecosystem works. Now, our journey so far, and this is not a commercial for CyberCon, but we kind of look like a fairly typical startup. We have a number of things we have to do. We obviously have to get our product ready and finished and ready to go to market. So those are the blue boxes. We have to get benchmark clients in critical industries and convince people we have something here that matters. You'll see a few of those up there. And then, of course, various parts of the sales and marketing. And if you were to go to look at our website at cyberconIQ.com, I think you would be amazed. We don't look at all like a young startup. We look like a very mature and sophisticated company. And again, that's where the evident mentoring and coaching and understanding of business from an experienced group of people really shines. So that's a little bit of our journey. Let's remember we are only 19 months old. We began in June 2019, so that's a young journey so far. We have great hopes for 2021. We are really starting to accelerate. You can see the early development has less in it, and then later, as we move into more sales and marketing traction, and certainly anybody out there who wants to become a client, I'm certainly willing to take your phone call anytime you'd like to become a client. Just let me know. So let me tell you what we do and why it matters globally. Cybersecurity has become a plague. An economic plague, a social plague, a political plague. Doesn't matter where you look, you can find a bad news story. It is a company that's being hacked for economic reasons, or it's, which is often state-sponsored from Russia. You have the Chinese with 10,000 very smart people working for the state whose sole mission, they're in fact, this is interesting, they are in fact given bonuses based on how much IP they can steal from American companies. Quite fascinating. So you have the Chinese going after this. You have a couple of really, we call them the naughty nine in the national intelligence circle. You know, you have a bunch of countries that really don't like us very much. I'm sure you would be all amazed to hear that despite the warm relationship between President, soon to be ex-President Trump, but President Trump and North Korean dictator Kim, this is not a warm relationship in cyberspace, I can assure you. So North Korea is constantly attacking us. So when you look across the geopolitical spectrum, you begin to realize that this is a very significant problem. And it's even worse if I tell you what's happened in COVID. So since the arrival of the first stay-at-home orders in April, we have seen a 320% increase in the volume of cyber attacks on American companies and employees. Now, that's a threefold increase in the threat volume, more than half of which is targeted at taking advantage of people's anxiety about COVID. So let me tell you, this is not a pleasant story on the inside. If you were to look at the FBI crime data through the second quarter and third quarter, you'd be truly stunned to also learn that more than 70% of the successful cyber attacks that involve economic harm involve an accidental insider. They involve a human being on the inside of an organization who did not intend to harm it, who is turned somehow into doing something they shouldn't do. We call this the human element or the human factor cybersecurity. So for those of you that think cybersecurity is a technology problem, you're wrong. It's not a technology problem. In fact, it has almost nothing to do with technology because technology is what has created the problem. It's an organizational and human issue, and we often don't think of it in those terms. So what we do and why it matters is we are here to make sure that we can reduce the probability of that accidental insider attack, reduce the cost of those breaches when they occur. But the most important thing is to help people think about their role in cybersecurity differently. How can we make sure that from the time they're young, and you'll hear me talk about K-12 education in a second, from the time they're very young, that people become aware that their digital footprint and what they're doing is a future prognosticator of whether or not they're going to be a cybersecurity risk. Now that's a truly remarkable thought, that from the time they're children, they're beginning to build an online digital footprint that will be there for their lifetime, by the way. And what does that mean? And what do we need to do to think differently? And are we really equipping everybody, citizens, students, businesses, government, no matter where I look, we need to advance our understanding of this risk, not through fear, but through a sense of empowerment and an ability to take it in hand and to make a difference at the very heart of the problem itself. So what I want to do is help convert this from being somebody's business some of the time to everybody's business all of the time. And I think that is probably the change your work kind of mission that we really appreciate, and which certainly the employees of this company stand behind. So I won't go in, this is not a commercial for our product, but essentially what we're able to do that nobody else is able to do, because again, back to the role of the institution, the standardized test, the instrument or assessment tool that I've developed is patented. And of course, what's amazing about that is when you develop a brand new way of thinking about a problem, you can really have a different outcome. And so what we do is we essentially make the people side of cybersecurity visible and measurable and manageable. We put it in front of leaders and employees, and we personalize it. We say, look, this is your potential contribution to the cost of a cybersecurity attack on your business. So we want to get people engaged in thinking about it as a very personal mission, something they need to take their own personal responsibility for. As I said, it's not somebody else's problem. It is not the CIO or CISO's problem. It is not the government's problem. It is not the technology vendor's problem. It is not about the gadget, widget, gizmo, or gadget. It's none gadget. It's none of that. It's about whether or not you understand cybersecurity at a personal level, because as we teach you to keep yourself safer online, you also in turn keep your organization safer online. So we truly make organizations safer one person at a time. So in terms of where we're at, we are on version 1.7, which we launched in October. We've gotten a lot of proven results and happy clients, which is a good news story. But here's what I want to tell you that's interesting. I don't know whether any of you currently have suffered through some of the tyranny of security awareness training that's out there, but if you've been put through that meat grinder, I doubt you're lining up for more, would be my general perception. So what's really neat is we have a 4.7 out of 5 client satisfaction rate. We actually have people telling us they've never experienced training that was so personal and which made such a difference. And part of that is because we are aligning, as Patty pointed out in the introduction, we are aligning the intersection of behavioral science and cybersecurity. So this, again, has nothing to do with keeping the organization safer online from a technology point of view. That's actually called cyber hygiene. That's somebody else's job, if you like. We're really talking about how we get to the core of how we behave online. And I liken this to teaching your children to look both ways before they cross the street. As we all know, boys or girls, when they're young, they have instincts and impulses, and we have to arrest those instincts and impulses, and we need to replace it with a new habit. And that habit is to stop and look both ways before we cross the street. Doesn't that sound like a simple analogy? Well, what we do is we try to ensure that employees look both ways before they cross the cyber street. What we're trying to do is help people understand that the way they behave online is not accidental. It's actually predictable. It is devolved from who they are, their perceptions of the world, their experience, the degree to which they are easily distracted, like me. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you can see automatically that just by thinking about it in that simple way, what we want to do is help you arrest your first instinct or impulse, which could get you into a lot of trouble. We want you to take some time, and then instead of that instinct or impulse, we want a planned response. In behavioral terms, this is known as stimulus response. So we want a stimulus that makes you think. We want to intervene to make you not give in to your instincts or impulses, and instead replace it with a planned response. And as a result of that, it will keep you safer online and let you spot people who are trying to take advantage of your vulnerabilities to harm either you or your organizations. And this has had remarkable results. So the reason we know it's different is because we did side-by-side controlled randomized experiments. These are the same things you do in drug trials or vaccine trials. Very timely topic given our COVID-19 vaccines. You know that they look at this kind of scientific information when approving things. So we have a client, a very large insurance company, and to put it in perspective, we were 4 to 6 times more effective at changing the rate at which employees clicked on what we call fake phishing campaigns. These are ways we test whether or not employees are vulnerable. So you can see in the 2 experiments that it was important. Here's the other most important thing. Against the leading competitor in the market that had 71 repeat offenders after training, we had 1. So we also know that our interventions have been tested because this makes sense. So just a quick show of hands, if you watch Netflix as an example, or you shop on Amazon or any of those things, okay, if you do that, you know what I'm talking about when I say personalization. How when you go to the Amazon site, they said, people like you also bought, yes, or when you go to Netflix, you might like this. This is known as personalization, and it's the same thing we do. With the information that we're able to glean from the way employees are, we are able to personalize their training. And the fact that we're curating and personalizing the experience means we're speaking directly to them. So when we talk about the underlying behavioral science, there's a lot to this. I want to finish in the last few slides and then happy to move to questions and discussions. I want to tell you that there are some especially nasty targets that we really need to help in this country. Financial services, obviously we want to keep banking safe. Healthcare worries me enormously because health records are increasingly only stored electronically. And I think that even though we have HIPAA, again, you could begin to think that this was somebody else's responsibility. But I'm really amazed. I'll give you just one small example. My partner's at home the other day and he was downloading his lab results. And I said, what in heaven's name are you doing? Just look at them and leave them where they are. You don't have to put your lab results on your computer. Like, think, and this is somebody who I'm pretty close to and I see every day. And I'm like, Stephen, state and local government, obviously, K-12 education, which I'll talk about, and our elderly. And I worry especially about the vulnerability of our elderly population. It is true that in the last set of FBI crime data from 2019, 53% of citizens who lost money in a cybersecurity attack were 55 or older. So more than half. So this is clearly, again, a plague. So what should you know? Well, a couple of things. Unfortunately, society's misery is our gain. Like we live in a world that's very strange. We get the call frequently after a company has been hacked. So a few things that I would tell you. I think that what you should know to protect yourself and your business, because many of you are in business or working for organizations, is I think you need to think about some of these common things, right? Attacks that devolve from business email, identity theft, ransomware. These are all things you should know about. I should also, if you don't know about it, encourage you to report crime to IC3, which is the Internet Crime Reporting Center, and to work with your nearest FBI field office, because those are all folks who can help you if you get into trouble. Worst case scenario, now that I'm here at Rotary, call me, because if you're in York City or York County and you really need help, I am happy to act as a companion on the journey. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. And I say that because the attacks are hitting pretty close to home. I don't know how many of you are aware that just before Christmas, Delaware County, PA, just out by Philly, was hit in a very significant cyber attack. This was the worst attack so far in the Commonwealth. It required that they pay $500,000 ransom in order to reactivate the county. They were able to drop within 12 minutes every critical system in the county. They could do no title registration. They could collect no taxes. They could not get into the bylaw enforcement system. They dropped everything in the county except 911, and they did it in 12 minutes. So it's quite frightening, and it is important for us to understand that this is not something that's happening to other people. This is something that is happening right in our own backyard. So we are currently working with Delaware County, and they're getting back on their feet. But I also need to tell you, they carry cybersecurity insurance, and many of you may, and this is a common misconception. So in this particular case, the insurer decided to pay the ransom rather than trying to fix the problem. And luckily enough, this works. I will also tell you, not that I have much reason to know this, but just trust me that I do, some insider knowledge. The NSA has a desk that actually ranks the crime gangs for their reliability in releasing the keys once we pay them ransom. So it should tell you how frequently this happens. And people don't understand that in paying the ransom, we actually make the problem worse. And the government encourages people not to pay ransom, but against having the entire county out, the estimate that they had on remediation of their systems is that it would have taken 7.5 months to get them operational if the key had failed. So you can't have a county not operate for 7.5 months. So that's a good example of close to home. I also want to pause for a few minutes. I know that in the Rotary Club, there are a number of educators. I'm obviously an educator and a professor and a fellow educator. So I do want to say that I am completely committed to the idea that we do not start education on cybersecurity early enough. And so one of the things we've done is developed an incredible product in the K-12 space. We really care a lot about what happens to K-12. It is absolutely stunning, the number of school boards that have been attacked. You probably have been hearing these. And this is going to happen more and more because we are all, of course, studying and learning from home. So a lot to know about that. So we have a product designed for middle school and grade 7. If any of you are educators or teachers and want to know much about it, it's a pretty neat product, and we give this away to schools at an incredible bargain, $1 a student for a semester, and they love it and they get a lot out of it. And this is what I mean about starting early. It's critical we do that. And as I said earlier, I want to finish with this idea that every single one of us has a digital footprint. Our digital footprint, like our shoe size, is bigger or smaller. It's to a large extent, in this case, under our control, which our own foot size is not. But every single time you wade out into the digital world, you are either an opportunity or a threat to yourself. And I don't want to make anybody afraid. I want to empower the entire world with information and knowledge that can make a difference, so that we go into this space willingly and knowingly and carefully. So my recommendations are there for no matter what you want to do personally or professionally. I want you to pay attention to some basic practices. They're there. I've provided my slides to Ben. Ben, if you want to share the slide or post it inside Rotary, by all means, I would. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here. I appreciate you taking the time. This has changed the world stuff, and we're doing it right here from the city of York. And I appreciate your attention, and I'm open to questions and discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Norrie. Fantastic information. Unfortunately, our time is up today.
Yep.
I think our club would love to have you for another hour or two. We do have some questions, and you answered those with your last slide, and we'll also pass them on to Patty in case she can help relay answers to our club members. But thank you so much. Congratulations on your 19-month-old business. What a fascinating venture and fascinating time. Congratulations to you. We have a book donation in honor of your being our featured speaker today. And the book is Don't Ask Me Where I'm From by Jennifer DeLeon. It will be donated to the Central York School District High School in honor of Tony and Jeremiah, our students of the month. And James will ask you to sign the book plate on that. Rotarians, next week, there is no scheduled meeting next Wednesday on January 20th due to the presidential inauguration. Our next club meeting will be 2 weeks from now on the 27th, and our virtual speaker will be Dr. Sylvia Whitlock. She was the first female president of a Rotary Club in the world. Have a safe week, and I wish you a wonderful day. Our closing song is Cat Stevens, Peace Train. This was live from his Earth Tour in 1976. Thank you.